From the age of childhood, a young boy named Anthony Egini had intuitively developed a fine appreciation of music. He was fascinated with richness of scoring and rich texture in sound. It is this fine appreciation, heartfelt passion, and enigmatic mind which was inexorably linked to the evocative music of Mr. Anthony Egini. Tonight, ladies and gentlemen, we present the Compendium of the Egini Musical Heritage, an annotated interlude and description of some of Egini's masterpieces. Ah, how fruitful it is to hear one's creative mind produce such blissful sounds, says Egini. And fruitful indeed will be the music we are about to hear tonight. We commence with the Egini composition entitled Libero di poter volare, free enough to fly in English. It was composed in January of 1998 and, evidently, it was discovered experimentally by Egini and created rather quickly. In this andante piece in B major, written in D major and presented tonight in a lower B major, the lead melodic musical instrument chosen was the oboe. Egini liked the sound of it and has never used it or written for it until now. He employed this instrument to sing the poignant melody line. Throughout the piece, there is the impregnable piano piece written for it. It commences with 3 deep beats of lower octave tonic and root notes of the B major chord before the oboe makes its debut. The piano continues along its merry way, resounding its root bass notes on every chord change. The piano playing remains vivacious as it flourishes through the notes of the scale. Accompanying the oboe in an ethereal melody within a deeper register is the cello, which could easily be misheard if one is not attuned with it. It is there to add overtones to the orchestra by providing intervals of notes and notes of triads to add a third harmonic series to the orchestra. The cello is also contrapuntal to the oboe and string orchestra at times, but this is what gives it its colour and makes itself heard and well distinguished. The beautiful andante string arrangement composed for this piece is perhaps one of Egini's most well-constructed and cleverly arranged orchestrations. The music just seemed to flow naturally as it evolved into a magnificent piece which moved Egini and had left him totally mesmerised with himself. The strings are introduced directly after the oboe commences and remain somewhat tenacious throughout the piece. With its rich melody, it evokes a forward-moving momentum. On its flamboyant peregrination through the piece, it relentlessly searches for the freedom associated with flying like a bird, and enticed images in Egini's mind of birds flying in harmony. In both the middle and ending sections of the piece, the cello makes itself heard by performing a similar melody to the strings, whilst the orchestra trilineates into a more claudicate melody in the refreshing short passage. Upon returning to the main theme, the cello emulates the strings in a lower register, whilst the intensity of the orchestra increases as it employs different triad inversions. The strings remain an integral part of the composition, glorifying itself into a bliss of optimism and alacrity, before it inevitably reaches its prodigious unification with the poignant melody of the oboe, whilst the cello suddenly becomes contrapuntal in the dramatic climax of this masterpiece. Ladies and gentlemen, we present to you Libero di poter volare by Anthony Egini. Quite a multitude of Anthony's compositions were vocal songs, so it is not surprising that he could write good vocal melodies with a creative musical accompaniment. In the Only One, composed in only one day of November 1996, Anthony had written one of his best vocal songs. It was written in G major for the piano, cello, string orchestra and vocals. Performed as a duet, it had procured him a certificate of high achievement in an international song contest in 1997. Tonight, we will hear an instrumental version in the key of G-flat major. Though a melody written for vocals inherits a somewhat different character to a melody written for a musical instrument, this composition is cleverly coherent with both principles. Commencing with the definitive riff, which is performed by the piano, it announces the arrival of the piece and prepares the listeners for an entertaining performance. The bass is rich and powerful, combining both the bass guitar and piano. The strings are presented in rich harmonic context at the commencement of the piece in a pulsating, rhythmic manner, which soon coalesces with the riff before it descends the scale with a sweet harmonic voicing as a prelude to the main melody. The main melody is introduced by the tenor saxophone. It carries the whole of the first verse of the song, whilst the strings perform a rather dreamy melody. During this verse, the piano is very titillating and well structured as it strolls along, plucking a poignant melodic-like trill, which the strings also emulate early in the verse. The bass line Egini composed for the piece is very melodic and appertains a very rhythmic feel. Twice during the verse, there is the downbeat of 3 notes each in intervals of 2 semitones and 1 whole tone performed by the piano, bass and strings. They gently modulate the music into minor keys momentarily, moving from B major into A flat minor, which then flows smoothly into E flat minor before the next downbeat modulates E flat minor back into the major chord of E major. At the end of the first verse, the riff is once again performed by the piano, cello and strings. However, unlike the longer riff at the beginning of the piece, which employed 2 modal systems, the Lydian mode, with its sharpened 4th note in the G-flat chord, and the diatonic major, Ionian mode, the single melody riff uses only the Lydian mode. The cello and strings once again descend the scale with rich harmony as a prelude to the second verse. The pan flute is now used as the lead melodic instrument. The second verse is semblance to the first with the addition of the sweet, harmonious cello. At the end of this second verse, the riff is performed more prominently by the cello and piano, whilst the strings become more subtle. The piano then strums the D-flat chord in 3 successive beats, whilst the cello holds its lustrous vibrato, keeping the listener in anticipation for an inevitable build-up to the chorus. You hear the cello and bass ascending the tonic notes of the piano's harmonic progression with the strings from D-flat to E-flat to a rather triumphant A-flat chord. Here, the piece develops a degree of dissonance as the pan flute starts to sing the chorus melody, whilst the cello and strings retain a good deal of tension before the piece possesses some resolution in G-flat. Here, the melody continues along its poignant way, whilst being elaborately decorated by the piano and string orchestra succession of first and second note intervals before performing a 4th, then 3rd semitone interval to create a soulful harmonic bliss. The melody flows into the luscious chord of G-flat, where the piece is lavished with a heartfelt, soul-stirring harmonious weeping of the string orchestra and cello, before they amalgamate with the melody down to B major. Whilst the pan flute holds its note, there is a sweet contrasting melody performed by the piano, cello and strings as they all play a major 3rd, followed by a minor third, then back to the third interval of D flat, where the piano, pan flute, cello and strings all coalesce in the climax of the chorus, which ends on the tonic of the G flat chord. On this brief but climactic rest on the tonic, the riff is performed in its entirety by the piano, whilst the strings and cello proclaim their individuality with their flamboyant display of rich harmonic intervals of seconds, thirds, fifths and the octave. The cello holds its tonic note prominently before it performs a very poignant solo melody, whilst the piano and strings regain their composure by producing a subtle yet rich harmonic gesture to the cello's ornate performance and luscious trill which leads back into the third verse. The delightful use of soft percussion is now introduced to the piece. The tenor saxophone once again performs the lead melody, which was performed by the male vocal in this section of the duet version. The pan flute continues the third verse in subrogation of the female vocal. At the conclusion of the third verse, Egini cleverly arranged the piano, bass and cello to all perform an impregnable succession of 6 downward spiraling notes of the G-flat scale before resting on the tonic of the D-flat chord, where the fourth and final verse commences. The fruitful percussion adds an interesting contrast as the verse intensifies. The timbre of the pan flute adds colour to the piece with its warm and vibrant sound. The intensity escalates twofold towards the end. Firstly, the strings become unison with the flute to produce a powerful expression of the vocal line. That's when I melt inside and get shivers down my spine. And this in itself produces shivers down your spine. However, the most climactic part is yet to prevail, the chorus. Unlike the previous prelude to the chorus, no riff is performed. Instead, there is the continuing vibrato of the strings and flute, whilst the piano strums its deep resounding chord of G flat. Then, a very brief suspenseful pause before the chorus once again awakens. The same richly harmonic ascending progression of the strings and cello is now more intense than before, due to the addition of a successive third harmonic interval, which provides a prominent overtone and reinforces the intensity of the progression. This powerful interlude to the chorus is elegantly decorated with trickles of chromatic percussion. Now established, the chorus commences with the pan flute as the strings holds its third interval, evoking a sensation of excitement before intensifying ever so slightly to the tonic and octave of the D-flat chord. Unlike the first performance of the chorus, there is little resolution. The strings remain sonorous and intense in their higher octave. They still deliver the same array of harmonious bliss, only more poignantly. The chorus is performed twice this time. The piano and cello perform a single riff at the end of the first chorus run. The piano adds a twist to the end of the riff by using an interesting trill, whilst the cello plays an extra note, the second interval of the D-flat chord, and then back to the tonic. Here, the cello retains its poignant vibrato, whilst the piano once again strums along. The strings remain subtle, whilst being coloured by the soft percussion. The whole chorus is recapitulated with all its glory, splendour and involved intensity. At the end of this magnificent deliverance, the riff is repeated for the last time by the cello and piano before the pan flute and strings recite the last section of this masterpiece, singing the words, "Yes, I'll always be a part of your life," before a refreshingly unwinding melody performed by the strings and cello coalesces with the pan flute at a slower tempo for the final melodic line, "'Cause you're the only one." Now the piece can reside in its deeper, revering melody of slowly alternating third and second intervals of its root chord G-flat, performed by the piano and strings, before the flute and strings transcend back to the tonic from the fifth, down to the third, down to the second, and finally concluding on the tonic. Ah, what a soul-stirring performance. The next song we shall indulge ourselves in, ladies and gentlemen, is the magnificent Sweet Emily. It is a most fruitful and wonderful composition. It acquires a most elaborate arrangement of mesmerising music that is unique to the creative mind of Egini. He colours this piece with such vibrance and warmth, combining soft contours with rich textures to create an evocative showpiece of sheer inspirational vitality. The piece commences with a very interesting opening. Two acoustic guitars play arpeggio triad inversions. The tonic note of each triad is the fifth. This strengthens the stability of the chord progression. The guitars then strum two chords before performing another sequence of triads. This interlude is coloured by the flute playing a very complacent melody, whilst the very melodic bass cheerfully dances with the timbre of the conga drum's percussion. Then, in the second verse of this interlude, the piccolo is performed in a very psychedelic pattern of swift, colourful melodic delights, whilst being complemented by the soft sprinkles of titillating percussion. The flute and bass continue to perform their own subtle melodies. After the triad sequence, the guitars are played with rich acoustic harmony as they strum through this interlude and into the body of the piece. Along the way, the piccolo's timbre changes to emulate the sounds of birds in a rainforest. The flute's melody remains complacent with the rhythmic harmonies of the guitars as they dress the piece with a more pop-cum-rock feel. After having indulged the listener with this imaginative interlude, the song can now bloom into a realm of optimism as the drums create the pop ballad. The guitars are now strumming away as the flute is released into a bliss of melodic delight as it sings for itself, whilst the exotic genre of the piccolo still emulates the sounds of birds. The bass still retains its melodic qualities, whilst the tambourine makes its debut. The strings then roll in as they warmly introduce the vocal melody, performed by Egini. The lyrics are very refreshing and optimistic as they acquire hedonistic qualities. The day begins and I'm okay. Oh, what I'm gonna do, I'll do with you, is the first verse. The strings remain claudicat through the verses as their main purpose is to create a rich, warm symphonic backing. The guitars, bass and tambourine reinforce the pop feel. Oh me and my girl, she's so sweet. Yeah, I'm gonna make her mine one summer's day, is the second and final verse of this pop rock section of the piece. It is short-lived, but unique to the structure of this song. After this invigorating musical announcement, the piece comes to rest on a new array of rhythmic textures that commence from the previously unused chord of F major. From here, the piece develops a rock and roll character as the guitars strum their rocky chords vigorously, whilst the bass retains its serious momentum. The beat is maintained by the bass drum and the tambourine. The strings create a warm, ambient, contrasting backing to this musical passage before trilineating into the next, most beautiful stage of this composition. With the sound of the open triangle, the transition commences ever so gracefully. The G-sharp note on the guitar is sustained during its gentle alternation between A-sharp minor, which now becomes A-sharp minor ninth, and G-sharp major. This G-sharp note reinforces the key centre and therefore allows the strings to produce a soft consonance of a perfect interval between octaves of the G-sharp note with the same alternation of chords as the guitar, hence producing a very dreamy build-up to the next evocative transition. The piece now endeavours to reside in an even more reverie state by soulfully descending down, and it does this in a very elegant way indeed. The strings, in all its rich texture and harmony, cascade down with the guitar and bass, from D sharp to the very resonant and impregnable C sharp chord, where the piano also makes its impregnable debut as it sounds a deep C sharp chord. Decorating this luscious transition is the tambourine and the open triangle. In this lulled state, the piece appears very heavy and it becomes very claudicate as the guitar alternates between the C sharp chord and the C sharp major seventh before gently progressing to the A sharp minor chord, which softly alternates with the A sharp minor seventh chord, whilst the strings remain in A sharp minor. The music now awaits the arrival of the poignant melody of She's My Sweet Emily. The timeless melody has the ability to mesmerise you, according to one listener's comment. It is very soulful and sweet, very poignant indeed. The piece has now become a real ballad, as the subtle strings lavish the melody with its contrapuntal harmonious melody, which emulates a small ending portion of the vocal melody. The melody is sung again, but this time it contains a harmonised overdub of Egini's voice in the same pitch to add a richer texture to the melody. The piano performs delightfully through the ballad as the rhythm guitar plays its slow progression of G sharp to D sharp, alternating A sharp minor and A sharp minor 7, and alternating C sharp and C sharp major 7, whilst the arpeggio guitar performs triads. The pop ballad beat is maintained with the drum and tambourine as the new polyphony type melody commences. The new line, I'll touch the sky for your love, Emily, is sung, whilst She's My Sweet Emily is sung in the background, harmonising together on the name Emily. She's My Sweet Emily is sung once again as the intensity becomes more involved. She's such a sweet girl, Emily, is sung whilst being accompanied by the same She's My Sweet Emily, backing before the last line, You're such a sweet girl, Emily, mesmerisingly concludes the vocal melody and leads the way for the elongated yet invigorating musical finale. The piano plays a short trill leading into the musical festival to follow. The drums provide a pop-rock type feel as they downbeat into the heart and soul of the now fully matured composition. The music is now uninhibited and is granted the freedom to become wonderfully flamboyant and fruitful. We are now enveloped by the rich, complex texture of the symphonic orchestra as it is accompanied by the sweet, poignant sound of the viola. They lead the way into the exotic, yet somewhat elongated, peregrination of this vivacious, yet reverie composition. The viola lavishes the orchestra with its warm, contrapuntal overtones before dancing with the subtle introduction of richly harmonic flutes. The delightful percussion becomes more fruitful as a member of the tambourine family resounds its titillating trickle on every beat, whilst in deep contrast, the resonant acoustic bass drum reinforces the piece. The harmonic flutes emulate the tune to She's My Sweet Emily as the viola evokes a hint of the forthcoming contrapuntal melody of the strings as opposed to the already established dreamy, cascading harmony. These two contrapuntal melodies are repeated during the piece, often in contrast as they become polyphonic. The strings glide over the piece like an eagle over a desert landscape, before ascending on the eagle's wings to its new alacritous harmony before the poignant viola returns to perform the sweet Emily melody, adding subtle contrast until they appear wonderfully coherent with each other. The viola and strings then become contrapuntal, before the strings make a rich, impregnable passage to denote the tenacious character and power of this symphonic orchestra. The piano remains vivacious and the guitar is heard if you listen closely as it passively strums through the piece. The dreamy sound of the clarinet enters the piece as it awakens slowly to the sweet Emily melody, gathering the confidence it needs to perform in a more awakened state whilst being lavished by the luscious musical surroundings. The piece now becomes more fruitful as it is decorated with percussion from the tambourines and even the piano and guitar. The flute softly performs its ascending run of melodic bliss in contrast to the strings' gliding effect. As the piece fades out, the strings quietly make their triumphant ascendance to the stars, which are represented by the beautifully ornate collaboration of the flute and piano, creating a plucking effect, much like that of a glass harp. The piece meanders away, gently flowing into a tranquil, highly elated state of grace.
Begins and I'm okay. Oh, what I'm gonna do, oh, I'll do with you. Oh, me and my girl, she's so sweet. Yeah, I'm gonna make her mine. Oh, one summer's day. My sweet Emily, she's my sweet Emily. I'll touch the sky for you. She's my sweet Emily. She's such a sweet girl, such a sweet girl, Emily. You're such a sweet girl, such a sweet girl, Emily.
Evoke me with your sweet sounds, elate me with your grace. Let me exult inside you. Carry me on your wings to the heavens and the stars, and bless me with your infinite wisdom. Your timelessness will prevail into a bliss of hedonistic perpetuity as you journey into infinity. Your poignant score radiates with sheer excellence. Richly impregnable and expressive, you deliver such an inspirational and invigorating performance. Remain vivacious, as exuberant as you are, for you mesmerize me and leave me breathless. You will tenaciously remain evocative to me in the halls where you echo with such beauty, triumph, and grace. You will always be meritorious, and you will always be known as Elegante. The Egini masterpiece, Elegante, would have to be his finest composition to date. It had procured him with yet another certificate of high achievement in the 1998 Unisong International Song Contest, placing in the top 10% out of over 4,200 entries from over 45 countries, and was acknowledged for its high meritorious qualities. It is a very presentable composition, with well-structured melodies and harmonies. The title speaks for itself. Elegante is simply Italian for elegant, and elegance is precisely what this piece portrays. Egini was truly creative and ingenious in the writing of this arrangement. He composed it with such heart and soul, such elation and dexterity. So much, in fact, that he was moved to a highly elated emotional state of rapture, causing him to weep whilst he was composing and performing this prodigious music. Egini personified a very ardent sense of aesthetics during the composing of this piece in order to attain the sense of elegance that he wished to exhibit. Just like an artistic painter with his palette, Egini painted this masterpiece with vibrant tone colours and soft contours merged with luxuriant backgrounds. A lacritous momentum of cascading piano titillates the senses as the soul is warmed by the jubilant voices of the angelic-like choir. The sweet timbre of the clarinet sings its dreamy melody, whilst the piano is performed in a style from the Baroque era. The angelic choir is now accompanied by the luxuriously rich texture of the string orchestra as they sing their beautiful melodies in poignant harmony. Gliding through the air like a graceful dove is the viola, flying over the orchestra and towards the heavens, where the angelic choir descends into the soul of the clarinet. The strings now perform with elation, whilst the piano ornaments the piece as it prepares to move into an even more graceful state. The resonant cello and piano suddenly uplift the piece into a sublime environment where the cello holds a very poignant note, claiming its victory as the piano and strings gracefully present themselves. The character of the piece retains its nobility as the cello and viola now cheerfully play together in their alacritous playground, created by the warm grandeur of the piano and the exuberance of the string orchestra. The viola then proudly announces the graceful arrival of the angelic waterfall, which embellishes the piece with sprinkles of titillating inspiration, whilst the strings relax in a heaven of graceful elation. Flowing into this tranquil stream after the blessing of the angelic waterfall is the graceful viola. Flying through my soul with her beautiful melody, she sings with such timeless elegance. My heart is coloured with lavish textures instilled by the poignancy of her evocative serenade. The angelic choir exuberantly coalesces with the viola serenade as the Baroque-style piano wonderfully ornaments the piece, whilst the virtuous string orchestra rolls out the red carpet with its illustrious music. The piano then vivaciously commences its ascendance to the stars as the composition suddenly trilineates into a totally mesmerising performance. The viola poignantly weeps as it swims in the soul of the string orchestra's highly elated and alacritous claim for dignity. The viola opens the gateway to infinite freedom as it transcends to the heavens and augments with the life-giving light radiated by the orchestra's spiritual omnipresence. The orchestra now moves with exultation over a triumphant glorification with itself. Holding a poignant note is the viola as it glides the piece over the crimson horizon, coloured by the jubilance of the angelic choir with the string orchestra and piano. The viola and cello soulfully and flamboyantly dance together as they nobly return to their alacritous playground before being refreshed by the graceful inspiration of the angelic waterfall. At the end of this waterfall is a gust of autumn wind, which slowly carries a fallen leaf downstream, where it floats gently on the wings of an angel, before resting for eternity in the depths of my soul. Yes, what a magnificent piece of music. Elegante, a masterpiece in itself, receiving an overwhelming applause by our audience tonight. Allow me now, ladies and gentlemen, to take this opportunity in acknowledging tonight's musical performance by the Egini Symphony Orchestra. What a most magnificent deliverance they have given and will continue to give us. Let's have a warm round of applause, ladies and gentlemen, for the Egini Symphony Orchestra. There is something very attributable of Egini's music. It is the amazing timelessness of his compositions. They shall withstand the test of time as they journey into an optimistic infinity. His efforts were to compose music which would not date, and he would not have settled for anything less. This is very evident in the next masterpiece, which we are about to present. Emocionante is a very warm and spiritual composition. It represents the best of Egini's mind and comes from deep within the man. It is a rich orchestral production with the poignant voice of the cello and viola flamboyantly expressing themselves throughout the piece. Deeply emotional, it is a meditational exploration of the inner self looking outwards. It can only be defined within itself. Only the intelligent mind, even with half an ear, can hear without hearing. Only the blind can see without seeing. Close your eyes and listen with your soul as we present this masterpiece to you. Emocionante is a symphonic poem, an evocative meditation from deep within the man. Anthony Egini. Emocionante. Swimming in my soul, I wept as time ran away. I followed the shadow beyond myself, only to awaken in a labyrinth of dreams. I dreamt for 1,000,000 years, tangled up in this web of time. Drifting ceaselessly, I meandered through the pathways of my mind, where I swam seductively through an ocean of emotion. Benediction moon, rising and lowering tides, I am soul-searching. Mesmerizingly captivated by the evocation of my reborn spirit, I surrendered to the glory of my domain and the art of time, where my life, the music, makes me whole. Anthony Egini. What a soul-stirring composition Emocionante was, ladies and gentlemen, as it was exuberantly performed by the Egini Symphony Orchestra tonight. We shall conclude the selected masterpieces of the Egini Compendium tonight with Nessun Altro Amore. This is the ultimate romantic composition by Egini. Egini was a master at composing romantic music in his era, and this timeless piece reflects the esoteric genre of the Egini Musical Heritage. Introduced by the warm sound of the grand piano performing the definitive riff, the mood is immediately established for the romantic serenade to follow. The strings slowly bathe the body of the piece into an exuberant garden of luscious flowers before a shower of majestic light creates an artistic rainbow coloured by the jubilant yet haunting voice of the lead melodic instrument, which will soon sing the poignant lyrical melody throughout the piece. The haunting sound of the richly harmonic flute voice is beautifully accompanied by the string orchestra's romantic serenade, which embellishes the piece and establishes a very graceful atmosphere. After the invigorating verse, the chorus makes its dramatic presence. Announced by an impregnable drum roll, the powerful movement is refreshed by the string orchestra's amalgamation with the classically poignant melody created by the piano and haunting harmonic flutes. With its rich texture, the piece moves along quite nicely as the strings hover between being contrapuntal and in unison with the evocative melody. Romance is in the air as the strings deliver a graceful serenade with their ornate embellishment, which adds contrasting nuances to the fruitful movement. So to conclude this mesmerizing performance, the piece trilineates into a soulful finale, which can be heard across the seven seas as it sails into the realms of infinite enlightenment. The strings evoke a richly romantic serenade as they dance with the nuance created by the haunting flute voice, which lavishes the serenade with all its glory. Augmenting with this delightful celebration is the cello, as it adds a graceful nuance to the movement, whilst the piccolo performs a poignant trill as the piece meanders along the open sea into a realm of dreams. Ladies and gentlemen, if you would, a warm round of applause for the wonderful music tonight by Egini, performed by the Egini Symphony Orchestra. On behalf of Egini and the Egini Symphony Orchestra, I would like to thank you all and hope that you enjoyed this fruitful presentation of the Compendium of the Egini Musical Heritage. Thank you, audience, and thank you, Mr. Anthony Egini. We will now leave you with a most fruitful conclusion, displaying some of the diversities of Egini's music. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, and farewell.